Okay, we are on a new chapter. Not that the chapters really matter, but we're on chapter 13. Um, and the pasuk says, this is 13:1, obviously. Bein Chacham Musar Av Leitz lo Shama Ga'ara. Okay, it's difficult to translate, not in terms of the words so much, but in terms of the syntax. And let me just show you the word that you're likely not to know, maybe. Ga'ara. So the BDB says for Ga'ara is rebuke. Okay, but obviously the normal word for rebuke is tochacha. So I always remember, excuse me, I always remember somehow at some point learning that Gara has like a connotation of like yelling at someone, and I don't know exactly where that came from. So I looked at the first instance of this shorish in the Chumash, and it's in Bereishis with Yaakov rebuking Yosef. It says Vayisapar el aviv el echav vayigar bo aviv. So Neima Novetsky translates it as he recounted it to his father and his brothers. His father berated him and said to him, what is this dream that you dream? So berated, I think, is a good translation for Ga'ara, to be, or I guess, I don't know what the noun is, beration, I guess. I don't know if that's a noun. There's another obscure definition of Gara, but that's not known by many people there. Okay, yeah, so how do you translate this?
The son of a Chacham.
Okay, so yeah, so the son of a Chacham. Okay, that it definitely looks like that.
But
I mean, I'm saying like that's one way to translate it, but yeah.
Musar Av, I guess, takes Musar from his father.
Okay, so you're saying takes. You definitely have to insert a word there, right?
Yeah.
Takes rebuke, or I guess let's say discipline, because we're going to use rebuke for Gara. Discipline from his father. Okay, and you're also saying from. I'm just putting these in brackets because I want to be conscious of what words are in the pasuk and what words we're filling in. Okay, Leitz
Yeah.
Shama Gara.
And a scoffer does not listen to rebuke.
Okay, so scoffer. So I also would have like normally translated this as does not listen, but what is the strict translation?
Shama, I guess, to hear.
Okay, here, what tense is it in though?
Previous tense.
Past tense.
Past.
Yeah, right. So
Right.
did not listen. Okay, to review. Okay, all right. So that is the literal translation here. Okay, so let's see what our minimalist meforshim say.
But what's
That's
present
the
tense for
question in
Shama?
translation.
Shomea.
Shomea, okay.
Yeah. Okay, so the Targum Sadia
Rabbi
Gaon
guys?
translation. Yeah, David.
Just a question on the translation.
Yeah.
Do we need to translate as the son of a Chacham versus just a son who is a Chacham?
Okay, right. That's the other way to translate it, right? So so the son of a Chacham, okay, or sorry, a son of a Chacham, I should say. A son of a Chacham or a Chacham son. Right. Those are the two ways to say it. Yeah, Isaiah?
Why why does what does Musar Av mean, take discipline from his father and not like give discipline to his father?
What did you say?
Like the opposite, like he applies discipline to his father.
To his father?
Yeah.
He applies discipline to his father. You could translate that way. It's a little counterintuitive to say that the wise son disciplines his father. Like usually goes
Right.
the other direction.
Or he could be a discipline to his father. I don't know exactly.
Right.
But.
So that's what I was trying to say when at the beginning of the translation here, which is that the word. Okay, you know what? I'm going to skip to the Alter's footnote here. Says a wise son through a father's reproof. The Hebrew is still more gnomic. I had to look up what the word gnomic means. It means enigmatically or cryptically terse. Okay, meaning like it's very concise but also cryptic. Just 4 words without a verb or a preposition. Literally, wise son, father's reproof. Okay, so that's the challenge here. I'm going to actually move this up so that we can see this as a reminder here. Okay, so this is actually, I guess we don't really need to move it because we're going to be down there anyway. Yeah. Okay. So the question is like, what words do we fill this in with. Okay, and that's why I'm doing brackets here. So there are many different possibilities. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and hold on a second. I'll just say this here. Literal translation of first half is son, wise, rebuke, father. Okay, so you kind of have to like treat this like hieroglyphics. Okay, so let's maybe what we'll do, maybe this will be one where we do like different translations here. Okay, so translation 1. Okay, actually hold on, I'm not exactly sure how to do this. All right, just keep in mind that the brackets means like flexible here. Okay, and maybe I'm going to take this out because it's a little confusing. So I'll put this as a an asterisk. A wise son. Okay, fine. All right, so let's go to the minimalist translations here. Okay, so we have Sadigon translates it as Haben HaChacham, the wise son. Okay, okay, so that is taking it like David suggested. Oops, this was not meant to be a bullet point. It's supposed to be a footnote. No. Okay. The wise son, Makabel Musar Ha'av, accepts the discipline of the father. The Leitz, who misha eno shamea ga'araso. But the Leitz, scoffer, is one who does not listen to his rebuke. Okay, so you see Sadigon here is doing our job for us, right? He's like filling out all of the missing words and showing what the relationship is with each thing. Okay, Targum, I think, is all the same except for the end. So bar hakima, I think that's the same ambiguity as the Hebrew. Okay, so let's just say a son of a wise man, Makabel Mardusa Da'aba, accepts the rebuke. So he adds in the word accepts the rebuke of his father. I assume it's his father. Ubra mimikna, but a scoffer son. Okay, he does add words. Okay, a scoffer son, lo makabel, does not accept. And then I looked up this word ba'asa. So the Jastro says ba'asa is terror or urging or stimulation. Okay, and the Jastro theorizes that urging or stimulation is the translation of our pasuk in Mishlei here. So I'm going to assume that I don't think ba'asa is the standard translation for just rebuke. So I'm going to translate this as does not accept urging. Okay. That way we just have it slightly, getting the nuance there. Okay. Our scroll says a wise son desires a father's discipline, but a scoffer has not heard chastisement. Rav Hirsch says a wise son shows the education of his father, but the sacrilegious has never heard a reprimand. And Alter says a wise son through a father's reproof. Because again, so he's trying to like preserve the ambiguity there, the nomicness, but a scoffer does not heed rebuke, and he just like bulldozes over that last part. Just does not heed rebuke, just doesn't even do past tense. Yeah. Okay, so we really have a lot of contenders here for translations. I'm just gonna put all these in one spot. Let's just get rid of this, and then we'll put our translation underneath. Hold on. Okay, so yeah, flexibility is the name of the game here. We got to be keep our minds flexible in terms of which translation we do. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna go ahead and copy and paste these translations into the chat, so you can see. Noah says in the chat, I feel like Hirsch was incorporated in the impulse. Some of us might have had to read an Av Musar, like an Av Hatuma, like a primary category. I also vibe with wanting to do that, even if the grammar doesn't shake out. Okay, yeah. Look, we got a lot of leeway here. Even leeway that's not necessarily grammatically sound. I don't think. Yeah, I think there's a lot of wiggle room here. Okay, so yeah, so let's put it this way: when we list our questions, if your question is relying on like a specific translation, then please just like verbalize that at the outset so we can easily follow what you're asking. Yes, Mom. I can't hear you, even though you're unmuted. I don't know what the issue is, but I assume it's on your end because I could hear other people. So I guess type your question into the chat and I'll add it onto the thing. David.
Yeah, why switch from Musar to Ga instead of keeping it similar?
Okay, so let's ask a more basic question before we ask why does it change. Let's ask what is the definition of Musar, or I guess sorry, what are the definitions? What are the definitions of Musar and Ga'ara in this context? Okay, and then if they mean the same thing, the same basic thing, then is there a like reason why he changes? Okay, other than stylistic. And if they have a different meaning, what is the difference? Okay. And my mom's question is: are rebuke, discipline, or rebukes? Oh, okay, yeah, but good. So my mom is asking a similar question here, which is, are there different consequences? Actually, I'm going to go ahead and combine these two questions because I think they are related. Are there different consequences of listening or not listening to? Oh, you want? I forgot to do a translation. Musar and Gara. I'll just put this here. Gara. Okay. To these different terms, these different like types of rebuke. Yeah. Okay. Good. That was a long question. Okay. Rivki.
Are we assuming that on the second half that it's also not listening to rebuke of his father, or is it rebuke in general, and why is it specifying father in the first half?
All right, good. So in this, is the second half saying that the Leitz doesn't listen to his father's rebuke or to anyone's rebuke? Okay, and what was the other part of what you said?
The other part was, and also, what is there a specific reason why Shlomo is saying father in the first half?
Okay. Apparently, I can hear my mom now, so I'm gonna go ahead and mute her. Okay. I'm gonna mute her. Okay, there we go. All right. Yeah, and if the former, then why does it specify father in the first half? Okay. Ariel.
Yeah. In Rav Sadigon, the wise son accepts the discipline of the father. Okay, fine. But the Leitz is one who does not listen to his rebuke. Who is he referring to in the second half? His rebuke, is it
His father's rebuke.
like his father's rebuke?
Yeah.
Not like the Leitz's own rebuke.
No, it's definitely his father's rebuke. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Yeah. So he's
All right.
taking a stance on this question. Yeah. Isaiah.
Would the Leitz accept Musar if it wasn't Gara, but like
Okay.
Musar?
Yeah. So I'm gonna go ahead and put that in the first question as well. Which is, would the Leitz sorry, if hold on a second. Yeah, if if Musar and Ga'ara are different, would the Leitz accept Musar and just not Ga'ara? Yeah. Ayala?
So is this pasuk seems obvious to me. This may be Ariel's question, but besides
Okay.
for the father,
Yeah.
like maybe that would be where the Chiddush would lie. But otherwise, like that a Chacham accepts Moser and a Leitz doesn't.
Okay.
Like that seems pretty definitional.
Okay. All right. So I think you've earned this. Okay. Ariel's question. Okay. This seems obvious. Okay. What new insight do we get from this? Given that Mishlei has already established that wise people accept rebuke, and Leitzim do not. And in case you're wondering where we get that from, let me show you a couple examples here. So we have I mean, okay. I mean, we got it from the meforshim as well, but let me just see here. Hold on, just 1 second here. Actually, no. I'm all right. So we have the. Yeah, actually, you know what? I don't know. Oh, I'm in Bereishis. That's not where I want to be. Mishlei. Yeah, so definitely there are a lot of pasukim about how the Chacham listens to rebuke. So the very first pasuk in Mishlei proper, I mean, we've done a lot of pasukim in Mishlei, even in our Monday Night Shiur, where we talk about the Chacham listening to rebuke in various ways. But yeah, I mean, I think it's just assumed here. Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's another pasuk that explicitly says that the Leitz doesn't listen to Chachma, but definitely doesn't seem like it's something the Leitz would do. Sorry, to rebuke, not Chachma. Yeah. All right. So I think that's a pretty good question. Okay. Yeah, David.
What are the definition of Chacham and Leitz here?
Okay, good. All right. So what? Okay, hold on just a second. I'm gonna actually move this around here. I think this question will be first. Okay, so what are the definitions of Chacham and Leitz in this context? Now, I know those who have been in my research for a while know that I do this a lot. Is whenever we see the word Leitz, this is one of the few psukim where there's one of the few terms where there's an explicit pasuk that defines what a Leitz is. And even though it comes later on in Mishlei, I want to read it now. So this is Mishlei 21:24, which is Zaid Yahir Leitz Shemo, the malicious, haughty one. Leitz is his name. Leitz is his name. Oseb Ever Zadon. He acts with the wrath of malice. Okay, so there are lots of psukim that show different aspects of the Leitz. This is a definition that is, or this is a pasuk that is defining the two central qualities. One is malice, or aggressiveness, that he enjoys putting other people down, and then haughty. So those are the two defining qualities of Leitz according to later pasuk in Mishlei. But we still need to understand what the definition is here, because there are different definitions for Leitz. For example, we just did one in chapter. What are we doing in the morning? Chapter
Yudalid.
Yeah, thank you. Chapter 14, that was talking about the quality of Leitz, that he is a Yoshev Kranos, that he's like an idler, someone who just doesn't do anything productive, or that he doesn't have fear of God. So it's definitely a good question to ask. Yeah, and Rivki.
So it might be not so relevant. I'm just wondering between the translation of either a son of a Chacham, or if it's just saying a wise son. So I was just wondering on the discrepancy between the two, because I feel like even if the son of a Chacham translation isn't saying that he's wise, wouldn't it somewhat be that he is wise because he's taking Musar, by
right? Yeah. Okay. So I guess the question is, let me translate that into a translation question, or not a definition question. So if we translate Ben Chacham as son of a Chacham, so then what quality of a son, what quality does this son have such that he listens to his father's discipline, right? And Rivki's saying this does seem like a certain type of chachma. Guys, yeah.
So who's the audience of this pasuk? Because it seems like you would think it's the Leitz, but if it's the Leitz, then what's the message? Leitz, listen to Musar. We already know Leitz is someone who doesn't listen to Musar. So
okay, yeah. So this is one where so who is the audience of this pasuk? So so the three candidates that are in the pasuk are the son, the father, or the Leitz. Okay. And it seems like this pasuk isn't necessary for the son, okay, since he's already listening to his father, and it's not going to help the Leitz. Okay, so it might be for the father. It might be that there is a reason that the son needs to hear it, even though he's already doing this, or it might be for a that there's a certain circumstance in which the Leitz could hear it, or it might be that this is for someone else that's not mentioned in the pasuk. Yeah, Ella?
I mean, this is just like asking on that last thing. So can it be that it's for like the son who's like wants to be a chacham, and it's saying like a chacham son would do this, like do this if you want to be a chacham?
Okay, right. Or someone else, for example, a son who aspires to be a chacham. Okay. Yeah, Ariel?
Yeah. I mean, if someone is wise, I mean, I guess it's related to like, the obvious question, but if someone is wise, wouldn't they listen rebuke from everyone, not just the father? Like, is there a reason why it's limiting it to just the father versus?
Yeah, that's a good question. You know what I'm gonna do? Where did we ask that? Oh yeah, here. So you know what? I'm gonna actually modify this question here. I'm gonna make this question: why does the first half specify father's discipline? Okay. Is the first half saying that a wise son only listens to his father's discipline? And if so, why wouldn't he listen to everyone's? Okay. Likewise, is the second half saying that the Leitz doesn't listen to his father's rebuke specifically, or to anyone else's rebuke? Okay, fine. Yeah. So basically, what can we infer? Yeah. What can we infer? Okay. All right. Let's see if my mom's mute or sound is working now. Yes.
Is it working?
Yep, it's working.
Okay. I'm sure this question has been asked in somewhere since we've been starting this, but I couldn't help thinking of what like father, like son. And I not worry, but I'm curious about the Leitz's father.
Okay. All right. So what can we...
I don't know where to put that. Maybe it's irrelevant.
What quality does the father have in this pasuk, if any? Okay, and then like how does this play out if we assume that the father is being obliquely referenced in the second half? Right. So for example, is it that are we talking about like same father but then two different sons, or is it that the father, the Chacham has a father who's rebuking him, and like the Leitz has some other kind of father or something like that?
Yeah. Yes. Both.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes a difference. Well, because father. I mean, brothers can be different, and they accept their father's discipline differently.
Right. Okay, Ariel, you have another question, or is that left over from before?
Yeah, I have a question. Did we ask what the scenario is?
No, we did not. So let's say, what is like scenario, if any, is this pasuk talking about?
Also, did we ask what the subject of the pasuk is?
No. What is Rabbi Moskowitz's question? What is the subject of this pasuk? Okay.
All right.
We also did not ask the question. I don't know if this is, what the pasuk is going to be answering, but very basic question. I'm just going to see where I want to put it here. Okay, let's say, yeah, I guess this question is broader than what Rifki said, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Why, like, what essentially is the difference between the son and the son and the Leitz, such that one does listen and the other doesn't? Okay, in other words, like what accounts for these differences here? Okay. I feel like this is most of the questions. So I'm going to go ahead. Oh, sorry. And Noah says, do you happen to come across any translations that use musar as a verb? No. Did I? I think that's a matter of interpretation of the interpreters. Musar av. Yeah, I think I did. come up with interpretation, meaning like, yeah, how would you render that in English as a verb? I think I know what you mean, but like I think the closest thing I saw, yeah, I think the closest thing I saw is like saying like a ben chacham is like the product of his father's musar, like that which is musared by his father. Yeah. No, it says I know it as he is turned away, but from what, his father? Yeah. I'm not sure. I think the closest thing I saw is like the ben chacham is like the product of the musar of his father, but I don't know full on verb if I saw that. Okay, so let me copy and paste these questions into the chat so we can have them as reference. Are we gonna need three copies and paste? Let's see. There's one set. Let's see if we can get the other ones. Oh no, it doesn't fit. We need 3 copies and paste. I guess the questions are longer this time. All right, so let's do that. And then last one is 9 and 10. Okay. Whew. Okay, so let's take our thinking minute here, and I'll go back to the pasuk. All right, let's take our thinking minute. Okay, Isaiah, you're up.
Okay. So I want to interpret this pasuk as being advice for the father of the Ben. And I think that the idea is that like it's telling you like how you should rebuke or give discipline to your son / person who you're in charge of. Yeah. And approach it in a way that is musar and not ga'ara. Okay. And if you do it as ga'ara, which I'm interpreting as like, I think we said like shouting, then like that creates leitzim.
Okay.
So right.
So and what is musar?
Musar is, I guess, like even toned or not from a place of anger.
Okay, so I will write out what you just said, and then we'll explore a little bit more. So advice for the father: when you rebuke your son or whoever you are in, whoever's development you are in charge of, make sure you do so in the form of musar and not ga'ara, or else you'll make your son into a Leitz. Okay, yeah, and so then the question is, what is the difference between the two? So one possible answer is tone. Yeah, so let's see if we can understand what makes it what would make this a what would make him turn out to be a Leitz, and maybe use that to try to get a clear definition of
yeah,
go ahead.
So maybe like if you're, I don't know if it's tone exactly so much as like the premise that's underlying the rebuke. If it's like a fight, so then he's going to be fighting back at you.
Yeah.
The person, and then he's going to be trained to like associate his own development with like fighting with someone.
Okay.
Instead of like, this is for the purpose of being a better person or learning.
Okay, so gara is rebuke, which is perceived as an attack. And if that happens, then the son will feel the need to, first of all, defend himself, and possibly even to attack back. Okay, and we see that both of these qualities are the defining features of a Leitz, right? namely aggressiveness and ego. Okay. So in other words, it's not too hard to think about the fact that if this person is always being like beaten down by his authority figure who is like, always like criticizing him, then he is going to have a very fragile ego that he's going to need to boost by beating other people down. And he's going to be repelled from accepting his father's mussar because no one wants to like subject themselves to that. And that's going to, just perpetuate the cycle. Okay, that's a good interpretation. Yosef, I saw you wanted to add to this.
I mean, I hear what you're saying, but you do see that Yaakov did it, right? And Yaakov is definitely a Chacham, and his son is definitely Ben Chacham.
Okay, so then maybe we'd have, that's a good point. So maybe, and actually, I want to do a quick search for Gara. I just want to see other examples where this is used and see if any of them are familiar. I know Hashem does this to the Satan. V'yigar Hashem b'chal ha-Satan. But I don't know offhand other places. Okay, so it does not look like the most common word in Tanakh. Okay, so we have here in Tanakh, we have the one I said. Devarim is a different word. Shmuel Beis says Vayirau afike yam yigalu mostos tevel b'garas Hashem minishmas. It's too abstract to know. V'yigar bo v'nas me'rachal. Okay, also I don't know what the context is here. I'm just trying to see if there's any like obvious cases. Let's look in Mishlei itself. See if it's used elsewhere in Mishlei. Looks like later on in our parak, Kofer Nefesh Ish Ashro Varashli Shamagara. It's interesting. A poor person has not heard Ga'ara. That's very strange. Here's another one that comes to mind. 1710. Techas Ge'ara b'mevin mehakos ksil mea. Ga'ara frightens a mevin, someone who is characterized by understanding, more than 100 blows to a ksil. Those are the three pasukim in Mishlei that have this. Yeah. So Yosef's question is, so I'm going to actually have this as Yosef's question here. Okay. So Yosef's question didn't, like, we see that Yaakov used Ga'ara on Yosef and Yosef didn't become a Leitz. So how would you answer that? Anyone?
It's not that Gara is never called for. It's just not the approach you should always take to disciplining. Okay,
I think that's one good answer. Anyone have another answer?
But neither is Tochacha, right? Like, in other words, everything's never this. Like, we never say there's just a standard approach to take. You judge it by every situation.
No, but there are better and worse general approaches to take. In other words, generally speaking, you should not use Ga'ara. And you could say that if a father uses Ga'ara as the go-to discipline strategy, then that's going to create a high likelihood of producing Leitz. Whereas, in this case, maybe, we know that this is the one case we know that Yaakov did this to Yosef. Doesn't mean that he was always doing this. And it might also mean that he saw, if you take the shot that Yosef was a Ben Zekunim, that he saw that Yosef was a Chacham, then maybe he knew that he could handle it. We saw from that Mishlei pasuk that Mavin, someone who's a person characterized by Tavuna, Gara is appropriate to. So I would give that general answer here, which is that the pasuk is giving general advice not to rely on Ga'ara as your go-to method of discipline. Okay. Granted, there may be like situations or people like sons for whom Ga'ara is like effective, but it shouldn't be your it's risky as a general strategy. And I'm not just saying that based on the pasuk. I think I agree with this. I think like yelling at a kid is not going to foster a healthy way of relating to the content of what you're yelling. Like even if what you're yelling is good and the kid like needs to learn it, I just can't see that as being. Seems like there's so many examples, and I think all of us could just like look into ourselves and see examples where like we've been yelled at by someone. It's just very hard to hear ironically, to hear what they're saying when they're yelling at you, or doing it in a way that makes you feel attacked. And that's the key thing, I think, is like feeling attacked. I would like to see, it would be nice to see, maybe we could do this in the after party throughout the week. It would be nice to see what the meforshim say on the Yosef case or the Yaakov case, because it still is a strange word to use. I just want to see if there's any Rashi on here that just brings down a Chazal. I don't get into this too much now. But Yigorbo, Lefi Shahaya Matil Sina Alav, because he was promoting hatred. How is it Matil Sina? I'm not sure if that means something. He was arousing hatred against himself. That's interesting. So see, just even on a superficial level, then I could see that would be a reason. Like, let's say Yaakov sees that by Yosef tattling on his brothers, then Yosef is going to like make himself get attacked by his brothers. So if Yaakov like attacks him for it, and he has this reaction, then it kind of reinforces the content of the rebuke, which is, do you want to get yelled at by your brothers? So it might be appropriate there based on the content he was rebuking him for. Yeah. Okay. So, but that's the case for further exploration. Okay. Anything else on this approach before we go into new ones? Okay. Yeah.
Maybe one other question is, it seems like it's also saying that the guy's already a Leitz. Maybe you could get out of this through the zigzag, but like it's a Leitz. It's did not. No, it's past tense.
Did not. Yeah. Oh yeah. So let me just emphasize that for a second here. So a lot of meforshim, which we'll see, take the approach of, if you see a Leitz, then you should know that it was someone who did not hear his father's Ga'ara. And you could take that, you could take the audience of the pasuk as being the son, but Isaiah is taking it as the father. And it still, I think, fits into the pasuk. It's like, that if the only thing he heard was Gara, then he's not going to listen to it, and it's going to make him to a Leitz. Okay, Yosef, you're up.
Cool. I think it's teaching us about the character of the Ben Chacham and the Leitz here.
Okay.
So I think it's saying that the Ben Chacham he loves most. There's another person that says that Chacham loves Musar, but I think it's saying that like he really tries to. There's the factor that it has no verb and that's just Musar of shows that he like
he's
tries
all
to
about Musar.
I think the fact that he's a Ben Chacham, right, means that he takes, because he knows his father's wise, he actually tries to be like the Musar Av.
Okay.
He tries to be the Musar Av, and he actually tries to achieve it, right? Because he knows that it's the right thing and that will actually improve the state. Whereas it's teaching about the character of the Leitz and showing you that like a Leitz, even if you give him the harshest rebuke, and even if you hold a position over him, that he'll listen to you. It's like almost like a qualitative level that it's saying that in that mindset, you just cannot listen to anybody, right? Because there's just a disregard for reality and to introspect, right? And it's like a qualitative mindset.
Right. Okay. I feel like I just missed one little point. Just say the thing about the second half again. I just missed it.
So it's comparing it, because saying that a Leitz lo shama ga'ara, saying even to the harshest rebuke, right?
Yeah.
The Leitz is unaffected, because it's almost like the Leitz is like a qualitative state. It's almost like a philosophy that even if he hears the harshest rebuke, it won't faze him, because it's just a mindset that's not conducive to improvement.
Okay. So the Leitz's whole way of operating is such that he won't listen to any rebuke. Okay, even Ga'ara, okay, the harshest rebuke. Now this is consistent with the profile of the Leitz that, again, he's egotistical, so he's not going to like to see any faults. What I really like from a, poetic standpoint, the way, your explanation of like why it doesn't give any verbs, because like he just is or aspires to be the Musar of his Av. I want to see it. It would be really nice, according to your approach, if we can see clearly how the two are opposites. And I think that's what you're trying to say. I'm just not getting it 100% clear here.
Oh, because the Leitz, the Leitz doesn't even interact with the harshest Ochacha, saying that there's not even in other words, it's complete opposites. The Ben Chacham tries to shape himself according to that. He tries to be the Musar Av.
Okay.
Right. But the Leitz, there's no interaction between the Leitz and the Ga'ara. Even if it's the harshest level, nothing leaks through. Because it's almost like a philosophy that he just cannot, like, just in his framework, there's no room for him to be at fault or for there to be a value to improvement.
Okay.
So it's opposites, because one is saying he tries to be the thing itself, and the other one is there's no even interaction. Forget about being the thing, but there's just no interaction. The complete opposite.
Okay, I see. So the Ben Chacham seeks to completely be the Musar Av, whereas the Leitz doesn't even want to interact with the rebuke on the most superficial level. Yeah. Okay. So then now the only question I have here is, so what is the practical application, and who is the audience?
I think there's two things. I think one is that it can, practical application. I think it teaches you how to deal with the Leitz, is that tochacha is not going to be the pathway to do it. Is that he's not going to listen to the tochacha. And B, I think it's teaching you how, like, on a personal level, how you should interact with the tochacha. You should be like the Ben Chacham, right? Yeah. And also that to know for the psychology of your own children is that to be able to know that, like, the responsibility you have with tochacha, especially with your kids who are really looking to try to, like, emulate you on a level.
Okay, good.
Especially if it's a chacham and a ben chacham.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Good. I like that. All right. Nice approach. Okay. Anyone have anything to add to Yosef's approach here?
Yeah, I have a question on it.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm not understanding how he's interpreting like the harshest rebuke, but I feel like maybe, I don't know, maybe that's what Shlomo's trying to say, is that, you shouldn't use that in order to get to him. But I feel like it doesn't make sense to me to say that, because hold on, even the harshest rebuke, maybe it's just how you're typing it, because I feel like it should say that of course he wouldn't listen to the harshest rebuke, instead of like even the harshest rebuke.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
I'm gonna try to answer this, and then you tell me. I want to just try going to see if I'm understanding what you're saying, Yosef. You're not saying Gara the way that Isaiah is saying Gara, which is like the like tone or whatever. I think it makes more sense to say that Gara, according to your interpretation, is like the most like urgent or pressing or strongest need type rebuke. Like, like let's say I don't know, let's say like the parent is rebuking him for like driving while drunk or something like that, like something that could be like life endangering, like even something that's that like, clearly important, then he's going to reject. What would you say, Joseph?
I think it could be that, but it could also just be that, like, I think to a certain degree, like at a certain point, even if a person is like not caring about themselves or whatever it is, things get to people if you show the importance of it with your tone, right? Even if they're not getting makabel on the spot, they're going to think about it, right?
Okay. Right.
Especially if you're harsh. If you're light about it, there's a chance that they just disregard it. But if you're harsh about it, it will be in their it'll just be on their mind either way, and they're going to be forced to think about it. But the Leitz is not even at the level to Shama. He's not even hearing it, right? There's no interaction with him in the thing, right? And I think on both levels, like, also you're saying just qualitatively, the content itself just might be harsh, right? And he's not gonna listen to that either. But I think on both levels it works.
Okay, yeah. So a good example of this is like I guess two examples that come to mind are like, like military drill sergeant yelling, like most people, even if they have a strong, or even if they have like a big ego, and they're very stubborn, if you get yelled at enough by like a drill sergeant, then it's going to get to you, like you're going to like listen. Or another example I have, and I only know this from Saturday Night Live, where they have a recurring thing that Kenan Thompson plays, like the Scared Straight. But I think they have programs like this in real life where like they take like juvenile delinquents and they have like hardened criminals, like basically like scare them into not living the life of crime. And it's like very, very harsh, because they're trying to like make an impression on them, and the Leitz that's not gonna have an impact on the Leitz.
Scared straight is statistically like completely ineffective.
Oh yeah.
It's what it was like one of the biggest fails.
Okay, good to know. Good to know. Yeah, I never actually looked into it. Yeah, I just know the Saturday Night Live skit. Yeah, like the rumble strip on the highway. That's a good example, metaphorically, that Noah's saying that. Yeah, the rumble strip jars you out of the hate that you're in of like falling asleep at the wheel. Yeah. Okay. Good. All right. I like it. Ariel, you're up.
Yeah, I think I only have a half-baked idea
Sure.
For the first half, but I've been thinking about like the scenario and like the different rebukes for specific situations or specific things, and why specifically the father. So I think that sometimes when you live with your in a household and you see a lot of your parents' strengths and weaknesses and how they live life, and I think sometimes the rebuke that they give you, it's like, well, why are you giving me this rebuke? You failed in this in your life. Why are you telling me? I think there are cases like that, but the thing is, you don't. Maybe they haven't learned from their mistakes, and they're giving you this rebuke so that you don't run into this mistake. And I think, children by nature. This might be another idea. I'm not sure yet, but I think children also by nature, like, it's very difficult for them to always listen to their parents. So I think maybe saying like the Chacham, and I'm going to use Rasadi Gon's approach here, like he accepts the discipline of his father because, like that's what a Chacham does. A Chacham recognizes that rebuke from anyone, including his father. Like, I think it's an emotional thing. Someone in a household that he lives with constantly, and he may be so used to it, and it may be very like, all right, whatever, like you may forgo it easily, like it takes an extra effort, taking rebuke from him versus, someone who you don't necessarily know as well, but you may view him in a different way, I guess.
Okay, so let me write down what I'm hearing you say, which is that the and hold on, did he say wise son? Yeah, the wise son will listen to all rebuke, okay, even the rebuke of his father, with whom which is very difficult, like, I guess, which which is entangled in very like difficult and complex relational dynamics. Right. Okay. I'm just like, I'm referring to the whole broad thing. Okay. Yeah. Whereas the Leitz son will reject all rebuke, even if it comes from someone who is a stranger with a completely objective view, with nothing nothing against him. Okay, right? Like the two polar opposites. Like, in other words, the person who, so the Chacham will accept rebuke even from someone who he has a, like, let's say, like, hearing a rebuke from his father. Let's use your example. Let's say like the father does something that has like always been lazy, let's say, and the father says, don't be lazy. So there's a lot of emotions there, being told by your father what to do, and like, well, why don't you do that, all that stuff. But if the content is good, then the Ben Chacham will listen to it, even though, despite all that emotional baggage. Whereas the Leitz, is gonna shoot down any rebuke he gets, even if it's from someone who like has only his best interest in mind and there's no prior relationship, nothing that he can like suspect is gonna be whatever. Is that like the direction? Yeah.
Yeah, this is for sure. I think exactly what you said. I thought of an example that like it's like let's say your father is a mechanic.
Yeah.
Or I don't know, let's say, and your son is a Leitz, and like your father is giving you advice on how to like fix his car, and you don't listen to your father because you're Leitz. It's almost like the man has credibility, and like he does this for a living, and you're still not listening to him. Like, that's like,
right. Right, but I think the point you were making is stronger to say that like you're basically adding the word afilu into each of these things. Like okay, right. So the case of a Leitz not listening to his own father, like that would be one thing, but we can understand he has resistance to his father. But Leitz not listening to his normal mechanic, that would be the crazy case, and that's what the pasuk is highlighting.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, good. I like the idea. Okay, anyone want to add to this?
Can you just explain what you meant by relational dynamics? Because I just want to make sure that it might be the same exact thing. As
in other words, typically sons have resistance to their father telling them what to do. Many daughters have resistance to their mothers telling them what to do, for a variety of reasons. There's a lot of psychological baggage, a lot of psychological issues that are tied up in that, and so the Ben Chacham will be able to put that aside and still accept his father's rebuke, even though it's coming from his father.
Yeah, so I might as well just say this now because this was my idea.
Okay.
I was just gonna say like that it was also, I was coming from a perspective of the child, of like a kibbut av va'im perspective of like that's just such a hard mitzvah. And I was also thinking very similarly that I think that it's one of the hardest, obviously depending on the relationship. I think even if you have an amazing relationship with your parents, there are times where because of that, that's why it's a challenge, is because even though you trust them and have a good relationship, you still have your own autonomy and you still have like a certain direction that you think something should go in. Right. So I was thinking in like a very similar vein, but I don't think that you have to have complicated relationship with them. I think that you can have an amazing relationship and still have a hard time trying to be a wise son or like a wise daughter.
Yep. Good. Yeah. Good. Yeah. Ariel, you wanted to add something?
No, I was just giving the party sign for us having a similar idea.
Okay. That's good. Okay. All right. Next, I believe this is going to be another case of Hakol Kol David V'Hayadayim Midei Aryeh. Is that the case that Aryeh, we're using Aryeh's phone and
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I think it sounds similar, but I want to be clear, I think it's a little bit different.
Yeah.
So I think that this could be talking about having to do a character analysis before rebuking someone.
Yeah.
And that must take us aside from like different personal relationships. I think you could say that before, if someone does something wrong and it's fitting to rebuke them, you should first just see, are they a Chacham, are they a Leitz, before even trying to go about rebuking them.
Okay.
And to know if the person's a Chacham, they'll actually listen to what I'm saying. And for Leitz, it effectively falls on deaf ears. It doesn't even get heard. He doesn't, not just not listen to it, he doesn't hear it. And just to know that before you're actually going to go rebuke somebody. And maybe there's some other way that if the person's a Leitz, you can go and try to show them like some other way other than rebuke that this is a bad idea. Maybe show them practical applications or practical consequences from what they do.
Okay, good. So this is advice for the rebuker, the rebuke giver. Okay, before rebuking someone, you should attempt to do a Mishleic archetype diagnosis so that you know how best to approach this person to accomplish your goal. Now I say if possible because it's not always possible. You might be wrong, you might not have enough data, but it's asking the question, getting yourself into the habit of asking the question of like, do I have indications that this person is a Chacham, or on the more Chacham side, or are they more on the Leitz side? And then like plan accordingly, especially because in many of these cases, if you give rebuke ineffectively, many times that's it, you had one shot, so you want to tread carefully and try to like do as much research and prep work as possible. Okay, good. Okay, anyone have anything to add to that? Okay, Ayala.
Okay, this is half baked and I'm not sure if it even like is a big enough implication, but I was thinking maybe like the son of a Chacham takes discipline from his father.
Yeah.
So that it's focusing on the fact that he's a son of a Chacham. And specifically it's saying that like someone whose father is a Chacham, like despite like whatever his son is, because he's being raised by Chacham, he'll have some recognition of Chachma and like some appreciation for Chachma. And just by the fact that he is the son of a Chacham, he will end up being like more open to Musar and like Musar from his father, but also just in general, like recognizing that there is such thing as Musar and that it's something that he should be listening to.
Okay, good. So the son of Chacham will have enough familiarity with Musar and its benefits to make him predisposed to listening to it. Yeah. Okay, I think that's a good approach. I think we're going to see someone take that approach in a second. Okay, good. All right, these are great ideas. I like that. So if this were the only ideas, if these were the only ideas we would get, Dayenu. But thankfully, I have meforshim also. So let's look at some of the meforshim here. All right, so we start off with Metzudas David. I don't remember who said what. Oh, we got a new message. Hold on. Normalize Musar. Yeah. Okay. Metzudas David says, I'm going to go ahead and just try the translation because it's short. Give me a second. Metzudas David says, Im nir'eh chachma ba'adam, if chachma is seen in a person, b'vadai shama musar ha'av, he certainly listened to the discipline of his father. Ulezen nischakim, and that's why he became wise. V'im nireh shehu Leitz, and if it is seen that he is a Leitz, b'vadai lo kibel garas ha'av shel chicha, he certainly did not listen to his father's rebuke when he rebuked him. Okay, now hold that thought, because I think I remember there being Yona taking a similar approach. So I just want to read the Rambam Yona, and if it looks like it's going to be different, then we'll take it differently. But I think this might have been one of these cases where Metzudas David got it from Rambam Yona. So Rambam Yona says, Ben Chacham, hold on just a second here, Bialduso, one who is a wise son in his youth, Kmo Ben Haisi La'avi, okay, like I was a son to my father. Okay, there's the pasuk in Mishlei that says, I was a son to my father, which I assume the reason why Rabbeinu Yona is using this as a proof is, yeah, obviously, who else would he be a son to, you know? But what he means is like, I took after my father. Kishayire ben Chacham, okay, when you see a wise son, Biadua sheyasru aviv v'shama lemusaro. It is known that his father rebuked him, sheyasru aviv, and he listened to his rebuke. Leitz lo shama ga'ara, but a scoffer didn't listen to rebuke. V'imra isa, but if you see Leitz, Teda, you should know shi'uru kain, that this happened to him, lefish lo shama garas aviv, because he didn't listen to the rebuke of his father. Shelo atzvo, he didn't listen to the rebuke of his father, who didn't literally afflict him. Okay, but I think it means rebuking him. And he withheld the rod of punishment from him. We learn that it is the father's responsibility to livdok bo bialduso, to, I guess, assess his son in his youth, im osuk b'divrei litzanus, to see if he is involved in words of scoffing, v'sicha b'tela, and idle chatter, lashon hara and lashon hara, uliyasro, and to rebuke him, ki kishiyagdil lo yasur, so that when he grows up, so that when he grows up, he will not deviate from the musar. I'm sorry, from the musar. This is a reference to the famous pasuk al pidarko gam ki yazkin lo yasur mimena. V'yinhag behergel hayalus, and he will follow the habit of his youth. Yeah, before we explain this, David.
Yeah, I mean, is a thought on this?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So the lashon that he was using of lo itzavo aviv or things like that. Yeah. I think it's interesting the context. This is exactly from I think 2 weeks ago the Haftorah with Adoniyahu, and it says specifically lo itzavo aviv.
Oh yeah, right. That's why we got it from.
And so just seeing exactly that and then what that produced in a kid.
Right.
of like someone who's completely just like, I'm gonna do whatever, like I'm perfect. Dad never said anything wrong to me, and so I'm fit to be king. So I think it's just interesting exactly in this context.
Yeah. All right. That's good. There's definitely a good example. And that is probably where he gets the Lashon from. Okay. Yeah. So I'm pretty sure these are both similar ideas here, right? Let's just read it again. Metzudas David says, if Chachma is seen in a person, he certainly listens to the discipline of his father. And that's why he became wise. And if it is seen that he is a Leitz, he certainly did not listen to his father's rebuke when he rebuked him. So the only thing Metzudas David doesn't tell us is, so what? Like, who is this for? What are we supposed to do? So Rabbeinu Yona says the same thing. One who is a wise son in his youth. Okay, when you see a wise son, it is known that his father rebuked him and he listened to the rebuke. But a scoffer didn't listen to the rebuke. If you see a Leitz, you should know that this happened to him because he didn't listen to the rebuke of his father, who didn't afflict him, and he withheld the rod of punishment from him. And then he says the practical. We learn from this that it is the father's responsibility to assess his son in his youth to see if he is involved in words of scoffing and idle chatter and lashon hara, and to rebuke him, so that when he grows up, he will not deviate from the musar and he will not follow the habit of his youth. So two thoughts that I have really quickly, and then I'll open the floor, just in terms of just like making this more relatable here. The weird analogy that came to my mind is serial killers. Okay, if a father sees his young son torturing animals, okay, he should probably take that as a sign that, like, we got to get this kid some sort of, psychological help. Okay, because that's the type of behavior that if you allow that to, go on as a kid, that's going to be a pathology, and like that's going to turn into something very bad and very permanent. So that, I think, is like the analogy for this, is if you see a kid who, okay, actually let me balance this out with the other side. On the other side, we have okay, for those who don't know, I'll just say this now. Okay, the most important shiurim I have ever heard from Rabbi Chait ever are the 4 parenting shiurim. Okay, there's actually 3 and just a little bit. I think it's like 3 full shiurim and like 1 15-minute shiur. It's important not only for parents but for understanding who you are and how you became who you are and what you can do, and like understanding your whole psyche. I think that is those. If I could only recommend, and this is a strong statement, if I could only recommend one series of shiurim from Rabbi Chait, that would be the one. I think for most people. So the spoiler alert, the big point that he makes in that shiur, the big mistake that he says that all parenting or most parenting mistakes can trace back to, is what he calls the little man theory, which is the belief that a child is just like a miniature adult, and basically all the mistakes come from either parents treating the child like an adult and not recognizing like the child's actual thoughts and feelings on their level, or holding the child to standards of an adult, or thinking that the behavior their child is engaging in now is going to be reflective of who they are as an adult. So like he gives examples in the tape where examples that stand to my mind is like the father is in the playground with a kid, and like the kid is waiting in line to go down the slide, and then the kid gets up to the top of the slide and then starts getting scared and wants to change his mind. And so the father freaks out because internally he thinks, well, if this kid is a coward now, then he's going to be a coward forever. So I'm going to force him to go down, and that's a terrible mistake. Or the he sees the kid like make say an aggressive statement towards his parent. Like I one time saw one of the I won't say which kid, one of the kids of our Rambam, as little kids, just at the table saying, I want to kill you, daddy. And I remember this was early in my early in yeshiva years, and just seeing the parents not freaking out, because just because a kid says he wants to kill you, when he's a kid, that's not the same thing as an adult saying, I want to commit homicide, or another example, I remember seeing this when I first listened to the parenting shiurim. I was at someone else's house for Shabbos, different community, and I saw, must have been like a 2-year-old kid. This is like on Shabbos after dinner. All of the like grown-ups were like in the living room, and there's like a 2 or 3-year-old kid. The kid was walking, and the kid walked and started to pull down, I don't even remember if it was a boy or girl, started to pull down their pants. Okay. And the parents freaked out, right? Like, no, don't do that. That's bad, just like freaking out. And, I this is one of the examples in the parenting shiur where like, the Rabbi Chait said, like, if a kid shows some sign of like some like whatever, anything that could be interpreted in the vaguest way as sexual, that does not mean that they're going to grow up to be a pervert. But if the parents react to the kid in that way, it is just going to reinforce really unhealthy mentalities, because the parent is like holding the kid responsible for understanding the adult implications of what they're doing, and that's not even how the kid's processing it. So I want to use those as two like the example of the the serial killer and this little man theory as two like examples of extremes. In other words, on the one hand, you don't want to treat every behavior that you see your kid doing as predictive of how they're going to turn out when they grow up. On the other hand, there is such a thing as behavior that if it is allowed to persist, it can persist into something that is very, very bad and not able to be undone. And the parent has to like walk that tightrope and exercise judgment and reason to like know when to intervene. And again, I'll just say, without mentioning names, I mean, I've been in this community for like 21 years. I've seen lots of kids who were real jerks when they were little. Okay, like real jerks, really misbehaving, really obnoxious, and thank God they had good parents, and the parents did not try to stamp out those behaviors in unhealthy ways. But I'm sure that they also did try to give the kid mussar in a healthy way, and the kids turn out to be great, upstanding citizens. So like, I'm not saying that this is easy, but I'm just saying like, not everything is worthy of panic, but there are some things that are worthy of panic. And Rabbeinu is saying that Leitz-like behavior, if you see your kid, for example, like let's say you see a 5-year-old kid who's just constantly going around and picking on other little kids and like making them cry and stuff like that. Like that's like real Leitz behavior. He's saying like that is something that you need to intervene in. And again, not yell at him necessarily, but like make sure that behavior doesn't take root, and maybe try to get to the bottom of the behavior in other ways so that you can like get the kid out of the habit before it becomes part of their personality. Yeah, Rivki?
Yeah, I was thinking that this idea reminds me of like a stronger version of the concept of like, if you don't rebuke and I guess give consequences to your kid when they're a child, then they're going to end up getting it much, much worse in the future.
Right.
Exactly. And I think it's much stronger here because it's not just saying that they're going to get negative consequences, but it's saying that their entire, like, I guess, personality and how they perceive the world is going to be affected by how you do or rebuke them.
Yep. Scary responsibility. Yep. Definitely. Yeah. Right. Yeah. This is worse than getting consequences. This is becoming a consequence magnet, yeah. Okay, good. So I think that's Rabbeinu, Yona, and Mrs. David. I don't have anything to add, but if anyone has any other insights to add, then you can go ahead and add them. Okay, let's do. I did not actually read beyond this. Let's just see. I'm skimming here. I want to do at least one more.
Can I add a small point on Rabbeinu?
Yeah, sure.
I feel like it's just a cool way. I think it's the rhetoric like devices of the pasuk and like pointing to the Leitz and saying like, you see this guy? This is because his dad didn't.
Yeah, no, that's true. Yeah, that's definitely good. Let me actually show the paradigm example of that, because this is a whole method that Shlomo uses. So in Mishlei chapter 6, I think. No, sorry. It is here, but it's he says it again later on. So let's know. The Meiri uses this as like a methodology point, I think. I just don't remember where he talks about it. Oh no. Hold on. Oh, I know what I did wrong. Okay, it's Me'at Shenos. Okay, so Mishlei, I think it's in the 20s. I think we did it last year. Mishlei, waiting. Yeah, Mishlei 24, 24:30. Okay. Al sadei ish atel avarti, al kerem adam chasar lev. I walked I passed by the field of a lazy man and by the vineyard of the man who lacks understanding. V'hine ala kulu kimshonim kasu fanav harulim the geder avanav neherasa. Behold, its face was all covered in brambles. The wall was all covered in brambles. Its face was covered in nettles, and the stone fence was broken down. I gazed, I applied my mind, I saw, and I took musar. And then he says, what was the musar? Ma'at shenus ma'at tunumus ma'at chibuk yidayim lishkav uva mishalech reishecha umachzorcha ki'ish magain. A little bit of sleep, a little bit of slumber, a little bit of folding the hands to recline, and your poverty will come like a traveler, and you're lacking like an armed man. Okay, so we did this last year. I remember we gave a good shot on it. I don't remember all the details, but I do remember one thing is we want to get an idea of this entire thing. Why did he have to? The main idea was in those last two psukim. Why does he have to say, like, I passed by the field of the man, and I saw like his wall was all crumbled down. So he's giving us a derech in, this is the end of Mishlei Shlomo. These are the last psukim in Mishlei Shlomo, because after this it goes to Mashalim of Anshe Chizkiyahu. So why does he end off with this? Is it showing you the derech of getting musar, which is that when you see real world examples of consequences, then you should extrapolate a Mishleic lesson. Now, do you know for sure that this broken down garden and wall was because of laziness? No, you don't. Maybe this guy is taking care of his sick relative with cancer. Maybe he ran out of money and he just can't afford to like keep up his wall. How do you know it's laziness? So you don't know it's laziness, but you're not trying to find facts here. You're trying to get musar from real world scenarios. So you should try to say, if this was the consequence of a Mishleic bad decision, what decision might that have been? And then you extrapolate a Mishlei lesson. That's the derech of Mishlei. So what you're doing by doing that is you're practicing your Mishlei thinking, but you're also anchoring it in a real world example. So in, like I was pointing out here, we see, unfortunately, we see Leitzim all the time, and it's very easy to just see the Leitz and then just move on with your life, or to just say like, okay, that's a jerk, But what Mishlei is telling you to do is look at this person and say, oh, how did this guy become who he is? It was his parents' fault, it was his father's fault. And then you go from that into an entire lesson about parenting, or about how to give musar, or about what happens to habits if they're allowed to solidify. You get some sort of like Mishleic thing, but it is very rhetorically powerful because it's taking real world experience and like putting it into the Mishlei mill, So I think it is a good, I'm glad you pointed it out. Yeah. Rivki.
So on that, are we saying, because this was also bothering me a little bit, even though I still really like the concept, that it's not that every Leitz necessarily didn't have a father that didn't rebuke him in the right way, but more that is like an idea that can be extrapolated, and it is a true idea, but it's not like every case. Because
exactly.
Okay,
and the way I would put it, take it in your mind is like in the same way as when we see Mishlei Pasukim in general that say, if you're a Chacham, you get this benefit. If you're a fool, you get this consequence. And we say it's talking like probability wise, not 100% of the time. Same thing here, even though it's expressing it in like litmus test type terms of like, oh, you see this? It must be caused by that, But I think it should still be taken in the Mishlei probability sense. Yeah. Okay, that's good. All right, let's try to find someone who says something radically different. Who can we rely on to give us something radically different? Shadal? No. Hoyel Moshe? Okay, let's just read Hoyel Moshe here. Let's see what he says. I haven't read it yet. Ben Chacham, Shomei Musar Aviv. So Ben Chacham listens to the musar of his father, and does what he wants, what his father wants, without his father needing to yell at him or rebuke him. He takes the initiative. The Leitz is the opposite of a Chacham, who does everything with calmness. Lo to'il afilu gar liyasro. Okay, so that's like he says, not even rebuke will affect him. That's like what Yosef was saying. Okay, fine. So that's that. Let's look at the Malbim. Malbim's gonna be radically different. Okay, so he says Ben Chacham hu noheg al pi chukei chachma. So the Ben Chacham is someone who conducts himself based on the principles of Chachma, which is that's Malbim code in Mishlei for like received principles in the Masorah. Okay, things like you can't prove. And I think he uses it for like both like beliefs and let's say like chukim, like actual chukim. That like the only reason you're doing it is because of halacha. It's difficult on the instincts or the nature of the heart to accept and act in accordance with chukei chachma. He raises the he brings the word from the pasuk I quoted. So he says the fantasies that generated by taiva will cause like brambles to grow up in the earth of the soul. You need to cleanse the soul with musar, with discipline, that you rebuke your son with, you discipline your son with Yodiuhu onshi Hashem, and teach him about the punishments of Hashem. You tell him the harm that will befall someone who deviates from the principles of Chachma. And while he's still young, you should rebuke him with the rod until he submits to accept the principles of Chachma. Because fear is what disciplines the soul, and until it can rule over the fantasies, Yimshulu Tzirei till the imagery of the Chacham in his heart can govern. Ukashu ben Chacham hu ha'os shepal bo musar av. And when the son is a wise son, that is the sign that the musar of the av was effective. The haben shelo shamagara me'aviv miyamav, a son who never heard the rebuke of his father in his life. Lo lavachu ben lo chacham. Not only is he a son who's not wise, he will be a Leitz and he will disparage the chukim of Chachma. This might actually jive with Rav Hirsch. Let's just read Rav Hirsch. So Rav Hirsch says the word Leitz mostly means a person who mocks whatever is sacred. People rightly consider a well-behaved son the product of a good education, and the approval bestowed on him reflects upon the father too. On the other hand, when people see someone who makes light of everything sacred, they conclude that this is the result of some neglect in his upbringing and that he was not corrected at the right time in his youth. So it's similar in the sense that he's saying it's specifically mocking things that are that are sacred, the chukei chachma. So I was just discussing this with someone who is in education, and I'm not going to say who or what school they're affiliated with and what demographic they're working with, but we were talking about how like it is crazy now how entitled kids are, and like in certain demographics the kids just completely rule their parents, and their parents are afraid to say anything to like discipline the kid, and it ends up just compounding because the parents don't discipline the kid when they're young, and then when the kid's a teenager they're even more obnoxious and rebellious, and then the parents pass off these kids to the schooling systems, and the teachers, despite their best efforts, can't do anything because this has to start at home, and then the kid ends up just being like this damaged, causing havoc wreaking Leitz rebel, and no one can really get anything done, and it's too late. So I think that's what he's talking about here, is like this is one of the benefits of halacha, is if halacha is done right, and there's plenty of ways to screw people up through halacha, but if halacha is done right, then the kid will gain practice subordinating himself to a system of an objective system of lawfulness outside of himself, and through that practice will learn self-control and will be able to then muster up his own self-control in areas that are like not directly regulated by halacha, either when his parents say something or when he's learning a skill, when he has to like govern himself. That's the ideal, but halacha can help, and I think what Rav Hirsch is pointing out is that specifically chukim can help, and this is, I think, for people in our community or like-minded people, for us, that we crave rational understanding of everything. Yeah, that's important at a certain developmental stage, but there is a stage where the kid has to be able to subordinate himself to a rule or to what is good, even if the kid can't understand why it's good, and through that type of subordination, just based on yira, that will plant the seeds that will allow the kid to live a disciplined life where they can access the higher areas of Chachma, but it has to start with, you can't explain everything to a kid. That was another thing that on the parenting shiurim that Rebbe Chait mentioned is like, there are times when offering explanations is going to cause damage because the kid is not capable of understanding why this is necessary, but you're going to be, so not only are you going to be giving him reasons that he can't understand, but you're going to be putting this pressure on the kid to feel like if he can't understand it, then there's something wrong with him, and that's like a double whammy, and there are times when you just need to like pull the kid out of the street when he's going to run into traffic, like where it can't be based on Chachma, so like it has to be done developmentally in an appropriate way. Okay, so let me just actually summarize the ideas we came up with, and I didn't write down the Rabbeinu Yona yet, so we'll do that as well. Okay, so the ideas we came up with, which were very good ideas. So we had Isaiah's idea, which is that when you rebuke kids in general, or not just kids, people, you should do it in a way that's not going to feel like an attack. Because if you attack, the basic human response is to defend, which is going to deflect the tochacha, because you can't defend and also have the vulnerability to look at yourself. And then the worst response is to attack back. So if the parent does this over time, it's going to produce a Leitz whose whole life is protecting his fragile ego and attacking others. Now, the question is Ga'ara ever appropriate? Yeah, sometimes based on the person, sometimes based on the scenario, sometimes based on the content. You have to do Ga'ara, but generally speaking, it's not a winning strategy. You should give Musar, which is something that is going to be heard as like in the best interest of the kid. Okay, then we had Yosef's idea, which is that it's talking about the character of the Chacham and the character of the Leitz. The Chacham, it says Ben Chacham is Musar Av because he tries to embody it and to align himself with it, where he like integrates it completely, and he just wants to embody that Musar. Whereas the Leitz is like the polar opposite. He doesn't want to even listen to even the harshest rebuke, completely distancing himself. And there are many practical applications here, which is that that you should know when you're giving tochacha, you should know when you're trying to be someone who gets tochacha, and you should know when you're parenting. Ariel's idea is that that the wise son who really is Lomi Mikol Adam, it's going to be Lomi Mikol Adam, even his father, even though that relationship is very difficult, either because of particular reasons or reasons in the history, or like Rivki was saying, just generally, Kibbud Av Aim is very hard. So there's going to be a lot of resistance, but he'll accept the rebuke even if it's from his father. And then the Leitz won't accept the rebuke even if it's from someone who is not in a difficult relationship with him. He won't even listen to his mechanic when his mechanic says to do something. David said that this is abuse for the rebuke giver, which is you should assess their Mishleic character before you give rebuke so you can decide how to go ahead and approach it. Ayala said that being the son of a Chacham will predispose you to listening to it. So Ayala, I thought that was related to the Rabbeinu Yona, but I guess just like implicitly it is, because he's saying that, it's going to be a symbiotically healthy relationship where like the growing up under a Chacham is going to make you realize more the benefits of Musar and like be drawn to it. So, but he's not directly saying your idea. I thought he was. And then Ayala's point was additionally, this is presenting the idea in a rhetorically powerful way. Okay, if you see a Leitz or a Chacham, don't just take that for granted, but view it as the product of good or bad parenting and take Musar, okay, from that observation. Okay. Then we had Rabbeinu Yona, Mitzudas David, Rabbeinu Yona, which was if the parent doesn't take steps to what would be the best verb? I don't want to say cure, I want to say stamp out, to like help like I'm going to state this in more positive terms. If a parent sees the signs of a budding Leitz in his kid and doesn't discipline him, then he will turn into a full-blown Leitz, and then it'll be impossible to cure him. He needs to discipline him. Oh, sorry. He needs to discipline him while he is young, so that he won't deviate from that musar. Okay, and then we had the Malbim. Hold on, up here we had the Malbim, who said that train your kid based on fear to subordinate himself to principles of Chachma, and then we added even without understanding them, because that will equip him to live as a Chacham and actually gain understanding. Okay, that was a lot of good ideas. Nice beginning of this parak. Okay, that's it for tonight, unless you got anything else. Okay, so as far as I know, we are on for next week, and everyone have a happy Thanksgiving. I'm going to stop the recording and then click on Noah's link here.